but it to salvage Nigeria, to rescue Nigeria from the ill-fated quagmire this present administration has brought Nigeria into, and that is the singular reason why I want him. And apart from that also, his fatherly nature made him to be an empathic person. He feels the pain of the all and sundry. I see in him a true Nigerian, not someone that plays regional politics. Yes, Atiku Abubakar is a bridge builder. Atiku Abubakar is a unifier in a true meaning. You see, I love him so much because he sees himself above a region of our northern extract. He sees himself as a true Nigerian. I am from Niger Delta. I was born in the north, and as God will have it, I've traversed far and wide this nation. And I come to realize that Atiku's time is now, because everyone on the street is singing Atiku. In fact, Atiku is being preached in virtually every household as it stands right now. So his time is now. God has destined him, and no one is going to take it away from him.
As one, we can get it done.
Guys, good morning and welcome to another beautiful time out here on your favorite morning show, Every Woman. My name is Tiana Waldbasi, and I'm always excited to have you guys join me on every episode. I always do not do this alone. So how we be here, IJ? Hi, IJ.
Hi, Tiana. You're looking lovely as usual. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome, like I said, to another exciting episode. My name is Ijoma.
IJ, you seem very excited this morning.
I am.
You are always excited, Lily. Is there something I don't know about? IJ, we're supposed to be having
host relationship.
You understand? If there's something, just let me know, because I'm just looking all glammed up this morning.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so today we'll be discussing about something very important, something that we've actually not really looked into, and of course, it's something that is very important we need to talk about, and especially in our society, and that is internally displaced persons. Our focus will be on the women. I mean, it's every woman. And we've seen that since 2009 up to date, the Nigerian state has actually suffered from insurgency and displacing people, over 2.1 million people. This is as far back as 2019 through 2013. We've had over 2.1 million people that have been displaced. And 80% of that number are actually women and girls, women and children. The thing is, there've not been an actual statistics about a number of people that have been displaced, because it keeps going. It keeps growing. And then we can't actually say for sure, because when we talk about displaced persons, we'll talk about, most times the statistics come from people at the IDP camps. How about people who have been displaced and they are living with relatives, people who have actually relocated to other countries, nearby countries? We've also seen that over 200,000 people are being spread across Chad, Cameroon, Benin Republic, and Niger, and the rest of them. So it's not, we don't have a compilation of the actual statistics of
we don't
people.
know what the actual numbers are.
Yes, of people that have been displaced over the years. I mean, the insurgency have lasted over 12 years. This is 2009, and we're in 2022. It's something that has really bordered on the economy. If we look at the Nigerian economy totally, it's something that has really affected the economy.
I think our last conversation on conflict resolution necessitated this topic, because we kind of touched it a little, and we looked at why we had, we said 80% of these internally displaced persons are women, and we understand why this is so. We talked about the income disparity. We talked about how women are not as advantaged as their male counterparts, and how this reflects itself in the number of women and children that are in IDP camps, because they cannot afford to leave. They cannot afford to take care of themselves. They don't have the privileges that the men do, so they don't really have the same realities. And this is why we have more women and children. But I think a fallout of that conversation that we had was actually the fate of these women. You know, what happens to them? Okay, so for whatever reasons, these women have found themselves in these IDP camps. What's next? What happens to them? How are they faring? How do they eat? How do they work? Are they being rehabilitated? And we felt like these are pertinent questions that we need to get answers to. Because like you said, this is 12 years. A lot of these women have been in these camps for these 12 years. They've not moved on. They're still there. In fact, some of them are even faring worse than they were when they came in. And these are really issues that we need to look at if we're going to move beyond this.
So while you were talking, IJ, it just dawned on me that over the years, our focus have just been on the insurgency and the insurgents. We haven't actually looked at the challenges of most of the people all of the people in the victims in the IDP camps. We haven't looked at it. But before we go into these challenges, for the sake of our viewers this morning, we need to actually pinpoint some of those causes of displacement, right? We've said for a fact that the major cause is insecurity. But of course, we have other causes like natural disasters. So we actually need to look at what is the cause? Why are people displaced? Why do people have to migrate or move from their house to other house to places where they have to come and get shelter out of where they are comfortably with? What's the problem? What are actually the major causes aside from the insurgency?
I mean, it's not just insurgency, right? Because there are farmer headers, clashes, villages, like you said, there are, natural causes, there might be fire outbreak, the flood. There are a lot of reasons why one might, run to these shelters or these camps to take shelter. And what we know that the biggest reason or the reason why these camps are more populated than usual is really insecurity or these clashes. Really, these are what's populate. The victims of these incidences are the ones that populate these camps.
So in the course of my research, I just get to realize that one of the causes of displaced persons is natural disaster, and that's famine. And then it brings me to wondering, what is the government actually doing about it? Why do people get so hungry to the point that they have to leave where they stay, they have to leave their homes, and then go to where they will get food?
No, but why is there famine? Why are they, famine in the first place? Why do we have things like this? Like we said, for somewhere like Benue, where we know that
the food basket of the nation,
and we know that their farms have been attacked, they've been burned. Where do we get food from? Where do people get food from, really? These are places where you should even protect, and somehow we fail to protect these people. And because we fail to protect them, we fail to protect their farmland, their sources of livelihood. And we know that a lot of food, like you said, the food basket of the nation, that's what Benue is. And so you attack Benue, you attack food sources, it affects the entire Nigeria, really.
Let's look at the violation of human rights and the development-induced displacements. Because it's something that is very important. All of this discussion will not be complete if we don't get to talk about the violation of human rights. And I beg to say that this is more, we have to experience more of this in the north, right? It's across the whole 36 states of Nigeria, but we have a lot of this going on in the north. And don't forget, we're talking about women here. And then we've said over the weeks and over days, and the women's rights have actually been violated over and over and over again. And we've not stopped talking about gender inequality. But IJ, let's really look at this, the violation of human rights. How does it get to displaced persons? Why does it become a cause of displacement?
I mean, I think if somebody's rights is constantly being violated, if the person feels like they are not secure anymore where they reside for whatever reason, it can be enough for that person to say, oh, I want to move out, I want to seek security, protection elsewhere. I mean, that's actually a valid reason why people might get up from their place of primary residence and say, I'm going to move. Some people have also been abused to the point that they run away, and they can run away from where they are staying and decide to take shelter in these IDP camps too.
Well, I think one of the day when we're talking about conflict resolution, I just got to realize that conflict is also part of the causes of displacement.
Yeah, I mean that's the major cause of
war, and then people, I can't live in this place anymore. I have to move to where I can get shelter. And the numbers keep increasing. The statistics keep increasing. When I started the show earlier, I made mention of the fact that we don't have an actual statistics of people that have been displaced. We have thousands of IDP camps across
and you can imagine that if the stats are not out there, then how are these people being fed? How are they being taken care of? Overpopulation has been a constant, it's a worry for people in the IDP camps. They've said that most camps are overpopulated. And then how do you know they're overpopulated? Who is taking these statistics down? Who knows what numbers they are? So if you don't know exactly how many people are in each camp, then it follows that you're not going to be able to provide for them.
All right, guys, we have a guest in the house. IJ, we don't have to do all the talking because we have a guest, someone who has a direct interface with this problem in Nigeria. We're just going to allow him to do all the talking. Oh, I just already disclosed that it's a him. We're just going to allow our guests to do all the talking. But before that, we're going to go on a very quick break right now. When we're right back, we'll take it up from where we stopped. Don't go nowhere.
Growing up as a little boy, we were told every day that we were the leaders of tomorrow. Good roads, stable power supply, good education, job opportunities, political inclusion, better health care, reduction of the cost of living were some of the things we were promised in tomorrow. We were so excited about the hope we had been fed with about tomorrow. But days went by, years went by, and tomorrow never came. Turned out there was never really a plan for tomorrow. It was all a lie to keep us in their mental slavery. Because with each day that goes by, I see my country being stripped of her glory. But we know better now. We are more aware now. It is time to take our country back from these hijackers who keep recycling themselves. If this tomorrow must come, we will have to create it ourselves. But this time, with someone we can trust. Someone who understands our pain. And so I call on every Nigerian youth. Come 2023, come out and vote. Because our vote is our power. When you vote, vote for a man we can trust. Vote for a breath of fresh air. Vote Atiku Abubakar for president.
Hi guys, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Every Woman on AtikuLive. Like I always say, your favorite morning show. And today we're talking about internally displaced persons, IDPs. But our focus this morning is on women and of course girls. And like I told us before we went on the break that we have a guest in the house, someone who is actually going to do justice to what we're talking about. We have Mr. Leo Olisameka. I'm sorry. I hope I got it right. Osemeka. He is a humanitarian, and I love the way he actually. I'm sorry, sir.
It's fine.
So we're so excited to have you join us on today's episode.
Thank you very much.
So today we're looking at internally displaced persons. Our focus is actually on the women, but first of all, let's talk about the IDPs.
Okay.
Let's look at some of the challenges. Before we came back on live, you said something, and you said we got some of the statistics wrong.
So we want to know what the actual
statistics are, because I mean, all through our research, we realized that they're not one statistic. They are not relating at all. So we'd like to know what the actual statistics of internally displaced persons are.
Okay, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Oliseloka Leo Osemeka. I'm sure you can get it right.
Yes. I can.
Okay, so let's start from. Let's take it from last year, for example.
Okay.
The humanitarian response plan, is a culmination of all assessments by 136 international and national NGOs in Nigeria, working within the humanitarian sector. So this is not exclusive to just the Northeast Nigeria. Yeah. You talk about the Northwest, you talk about the North Central, you talk about the Southeast, you also talk about the South and the Southwest. Because when you talk about internally displacement, you're talking about every form of displacement, which includes insurgency, flooding, agitations, what have you. So these are all that, put together that creates, the different dimensions of displacement you have. Don't also forget that you have people who have become refugees as well, who have crossed the border. Yeah. So you have people in Niger Republic, you have people in Chad, you have people in Cameroon. And of course, you also have people in the other side of Bakassi, which is also as a result of
displacement.
Displacement as a result of boundary adjustment. Okay, so but I don't think that is where you want to situate. So, but critically, as at August 2021, we had 14.8 million internally displaced persons in Nigeria. In Nigeria, in country. And based on the humanitarian needs overview, about 8.7 million were in need of life-saving humanitarian response. Those are accurate figures. Those figures have come up a little bit. So currently, we have what we call cadre harmonise. Cadre harmonise, it's a humanitarian tool you use to, gauge what has happened over a period of 1 year to ascertain where the needs are at the time and who needs what and what are the numbers. So these things are there. But it depends on who you ask, you know. So and sometimes people, organizations are yet to, probably yet to update their records when you probably pick up what you have.
So of this 14.8 million, that's what you said.
Yes.
How many are women and girls?
Okay, so if you do extrapolation, you have about 12.5 million
girls and women.
It's pretty difficult to isolate girls because of the fluidity and the dynamic nature of the internally displacement. Also, if you put into consideration that a lot of, some IDPs are as a result of flooding, so they are just there temporarily, and these ones are IDPs that the governors or the government put in primary schools, and of course, once the flooding issues are taken care of, they return quickly. And the moment they return back to their homes, you have to remove them from the list of the IDP. So it is quite fluid, and it's difficult to say, okay, this is the number of girls. But if a displacement happens now, we can say, okay, in addition to what we had, if nothing has happened to the number. So for example, you look at the people from Kalabalge, or the people from Ganze in Borno North. Borno North has been the very deadly belt where the Boko Haram have made it very difficult for the Nigerian military to, make serious inroad. But in the last couple of weeks, there's been some semblance of progress, and quite a number of people have been relocated. So those numbers will come when the people who voluntarily return settle, and you do a fresh census of that number. Then you find out, did everybody who left Maiduguri, or let's say Adamawa, or those who left Yobe to the same location, if all of them that left came straight to that location. If they didn't come straight to the location, you want to find out where did they go to, so as to be able to ascertain, but those numbers are possible and they are trackable.
Because I want to ask, when you say the country harmonizing, now this is my question, is this estimation, is it holistic, or does it take into consideration the gender and the geographic location of this?
Absolutely. So the cadre harmonise is a French word for humanitarian needs assessment, which takes a cursory look at what is the number of the population that you're trying to affect, and what is their gender base, what number, where are they located, what are the opportunities in the areas where they are, what are the challenges, what are the difficulties. So this is what the entire humanitarian needs assessment tends to take, look at. So you're looking at food security, you're looking at water, you're looking at protection, which encompasses gender-based violence, child protection, education, and the rest of them. But of course, if you had followed, closely what the humanitarian sector does is that every humanitarian response is viewed from the protection lens. So whatever response you're providing for whatever number of people, you must situate it within the prism of protection. So it is women-centered, and women take center stage in all of this.
Okay, sir, so you talked about 14.8 million in general, and then women and girls basically 12 point, that's over 70 to 80% of that entire number.
That's about 80-something%.
Yes, of the entire number. So I'd like to know, what are the major challenges? We know there are lots of challenges they face as women and girls, or bringing it down to them. What are the major challenges they face in the camps, in the various camps across the nation?
Well, like I mentioned to you, that the humanitarian needs are quite dynamic. Okay, so there are several camps, both the official camps and the unofficial camps, and the challenges differ. Okay, but generally, from what we know, women are the most vulnerable, because of course, if it's as a result of insurgency, most often the men die.
Yes.
Okay, so once the man dies, the woman becomes the head of the family, and in some cases, you have both parents also dying as a result of insurgency, and you have the children. So if it's a male child or a female child, but most often when you have that particular situation of both parents dying, in most cases, the men, the young boys, are either conscripted, or they sort of go fend for themselves, while the most senior girl child in an average family of 5 or 6, tends to be the head of the family. So at that point, you know that particular girl child is a critical case, because she's not just vulnerable, she's a high risk. Because there are various coping mechanisms that IDPs adopt. So let's assume a situation where you have the man of the family not available, so the woman is the head of the home, which is very rampant. So you have a female-headed household with probably 5 children or 4 children to fend for. And you are doing any form of intervention, and if you don't center it around, or if you don't view that intervention or plan that intervention within the protection lens, this is what informed that protection lens we're talking about. Most often the head of households are called men in Africa, and of course in Nigeria, and more so in the north part of Nigeria. When you don't do that, at the end of the day, with the meager scarce resources you have, most often the men takes center stage and the women are put at the back. And if they don't get the intervention, they adopt negative coping mechanism, which includes, of course, sex for food or sex for shelter or what have you. So they become highly, vulnerable, and exploitation becomes a major issue. So number one key challenge is exploitation. So what the humanitarian, sector tries to do is to ensure that first you give, high level of protection to the women and of course to the girl child. All right. So because of that, they, subdivided the protection sector into, subdivisions. So you have child protection, which clearly takes care of children. So you have children-headed households. You know that you're going to bring that child into the child protection sector. Then, of course, you have the GBV, of course, the gender-based violence issues. Then you have the sexual gender-based. So it's subdivided clearly to create a microscopic direct intervention to these, segments, so as to ensure that whatever challenges this sector of people are having, get direct intervention. So, but critically, the major challenge is exploitation.
Okay, so a lot of women, and like you said, when both parents are taken and it's just the girl child, we've seen things like early marriages. These people are forced into marriages.
Of course.
And then we've seen the women who are heads of households, being sexually exploited. Now, some of them have complained that they've been assaulted by soldiers.
Yeah.
Or, personnel that are officials, camp officials that are supposed to protect them. Some of them have been raped even. And they've said that when this is done, they've reported sometimes and nothing gets done. So there are actually reports, of these cases. They've reported and nothing has been done. So what can these people who've been exploited sexually, what can they do?
Okay, so I think it's a mixture of these challenges are there, because what we have is you have more unofficial camp arrangements than the camp arrangement. So when you say official camp arrangement, these are camps that is run by the government, and of course governments, the non-governmental organizations, be it international or Nigerian international organizations, get their ability to operate from government, and of course whatever they do feeds into what government is doing. So as long as you have that partnership with government, what takes center stage is the official government camps. Now the unofficial camps are usually host communities where probably members of these displaced families find either their kith and kin. And when you have kith and kin within the humanitarian spectrum, you will understand that when you are with your kith and kin, you are no longer that vulnerable because you're with your family. So what displacement does is that it takes you away from where you get protection. You get protection from your family. That is the assumption. Even though sometimes too, people who create problem or challenges for very vulnerable people is also members of their family. But that's a different kettle of fish entirely. So when you operate within the government camp and there is any of such challenge, the ones that we've heard in the past, in 2015, 2016, that's where you had quite a number of sexual exploitation by camp officials or security agencies. It's not exclusive to military, you know. So I think we need to be purely, be very advised. Say it, you know, in a more careful manner. The military have done a fantastic job for the country. They've done a whole lot of. If they didn't do what they did, I'm not sure two of us will be here discussing this. But of course, you have a lot of people who have these male domineering tendencies that feel that women are properties, so they can do whatsoever they want to do. So that mentality is there, and that is one of the major challenges that we encounter in the camps, where you try to provide intervention and take away the powers of the men and give it to the women. So, for example, you have a man who has 2 or 3 wives, and the cultural, you know, practice is that if a man has 2 or 3 wives, a man is married to the 2 of you, one is a head wife, the other one is an ex-wife. The man comes to take the food. For example, if there's food distribution, takes the food for the family. There is every tendency by practice that he might favor the head wife over the other wife, or the tail wife over the head wife, because there's always a favorite. So at the end of the day, the one that is favored gets the better portion of that, while the one that is not favored most likely may adopt negative coping mechanisms, which we try as much as possible to prevent. If it's 3 or 4 wives, then it's also is worse. In some cases where there are just 2 wives, sometimes the man comes, takes that intervention, and goes to marry another wife, abandoning the other. So there are several situations you find. So where you have such things, what we do is that we say, okay, so fine, the man comes, you are only entitled to yourself and 1 wife. The rest of the wives are made head of households. So we intervene directly to the female. Of course, the men will kick, because what you've done is that you've tried to take the power from them in order to prevent those challenges that we see. So when you take it to the camps, where you have people who are, a lot of the people who are in that camp are almost 90% women. Even where the men are there, they most often go out to take care of themselves, leaving their families in the camps. Most often, you know, I think 99% of the time, that's what you find. And when that happens, if there is any complaint of sexual exploitation or any form of abuse, and we hear about it, of course, there are people that have been dismissed, either in the military, police, civil defense, name it. There are many have been dismissed, some have gone to jail. If it's, let's say, government officials, there are many like that. So the story or the assertion that, you know, nothing happens is not absolutely correct. There may be certain situations where nobody is aware of it, because there's this culture of silence as well. You don't want some of the victims feel that they will be victimized all over again if they speak up. So that's why part of the sensitization and of course the other intervention is to, you know, try to fight this culture of silence, where you also create another layer of protection to people who are victims, so that they don't get victimized all over again. So it's a whole, you know, it's a massive intervention that is going on. It's not going to end tomorrow, okay? People misunderstand this language, that it's not going to end tomorrow, not because we want it, but the truth is that a lot of damage has been done.
It's going to
and
take
it's
a long
not,
time.
it's not by wishful thinking. It's not about what the politicians say. Every politician will say whatever they want to be able to win power, but the reality will continue to stare us in the face. So, for example, you take a look at Bama local government in Borno State. The entire local government was razed down. No single house was standing when the Boko Haram left the place. So, are you going to fix it in one day? The answer is no. So, you have a lot of schools in those locations. Those schools cannot function right now. So it's a whole lot of work that needs, and don't forget that Nigeria is a homogeneous society. We're interlinked. So if you take off from Maiduguri and you hit Konduga to Bama to Pulka to Goza to Limankara to Madagali to Michka, they're all linked. And once you hit Bama, you have already hit the Mandara belt. So you're already within Nigeria and Cameroon. So it's just the mountain that's separating you all the way to about 4 or 5 states. So it's a whole lot of work that is out there. So when people say, oh, it's going to take us 50 years, maybe exaggerated, but it simply means that it's going to take us a long time.
And in doing this, are there plans of, mental rehabilitation of these individuals? Because, I mean, for somebody who has witnessed the entire village bond, raised,
Some sort of
how do you rehabilitate?
plans.
Some of them have said they can't even sleep at night.
Yeah, you've mentioned that it's 12 years. So a child that was born in 2009 is 12. Yeah. A child that was born in 2013, when you had the major, of course, when the, what do you call it, when the caliphate was declared in Goza. So a child that was born in 2013 till date, how old is that child? 9. So a child who was born at, in 2013 was born in a camp. He probably lived in the camp for 9 years. I'm sure you understand. I don't need to say more than that.
Under these conditions.
So there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done, because a whole lot of the kids, when you interact with them, they all want to be military men or policemen.
So that shapes their future.
That's very dangerous, because they want vengeance.
Vengeance, yeah.
So there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done by the government, by the society, by the civil society, by the entire gamut. It's a whole lot of work. And these people that are growing, more people are being born. More.
Okay, so what you were talking about, you're talking about a whole lot of work that needs to be done, and then you also made mention of some official camps that are government-owned camps or government-organized camps. My question is, do you think the government is doing a lot of work enough work to make sure that these camps are being protected, or some of these challenges are reduced for rehabilitation plans, from your experience, as a humanitarian?
Okay, so that's a fantastic question, and I laughed because the government is broke. Government is broke. Nigeria does not have a dime right now. You are borrowing even to service debt, not even to pay debt. So okay, let me take away the statistician in me, because it will not be nice. The government is trying. So when you say the government, you're talking about the security agencies who provide security within and around the camp. They're doing a lot of work. I'm sure you've not heard in recent past any attack in the camps again, unlike before. That you hear, one bomb blast happened somewhere. They say, it's the Chibok girls they're using to do carry out the attacks, or is this whoever is there. So I'm sure you've not heard that for a long time, right? So which shows that there's something they are doing right within that aspect. But of course, for a few years back, it was as if the security agencies sat back and waited for the insurgents to attack, for them to repel, which for me was, it didn't make sense. But of course, they've changed it now. They are going on offensive, and they are doing a fantastic yeoman's job. They are liberating a lot of localities, and the more localities they liberate and create some sort of green belt, that also gives a first opportunity for those in the IDP camp to return to their villages if it is habitable. In most cases, the governor of, for example, Borno State, which is the hardest hit, there's a lot of interventions. Dangote is building there. Some banks are building houses just to accommodate people to, as much as possible. Yes, they are trying, but out of 100%, when you have probably less than 10%, it's a try, but you're not there yet. You're not there yet. One of the successes, if I can say, that we've had is the interventions of the international community, the Nigerian NGOs. For us, I've been there for 7 years, counting, and we can't talk about how many times we've escaped suicide attacks or ambushes, or we can't talk about how many of our staff that we've lost. We can't talk about how many equipment we've lost. We can't talk about how traumatized we are on certain issues. I'm sure you remember the conversation I had with you yesterday. So there are some people who come out to say a lot of things, but they have no clue what they are talking about because they've not witnessed nothing. They don't know what they are saying. The other day I heard a woman that was talking. I think she's an activist, insulting the NGOs, that the NGOs are the ones bringing the insurgents or feeding the insurgents or sponsoring the insurgents. And I'm like,
how do you risk your life?
Nice. I said, nice one. Very nice. Well done. Because she doesn't understand what displacement means. She doesn't understand what people go through.
I think a lot of people hear this number and they hear 21,000 people and they forget that these are individuals, these are families.
I lost my personal driver. I lost 2 of my staff in the whole of this, and it's personal to me. It's very personal to me. It's not something I want to talk about with anybody. Then when you come about and disparage them that they are part of the problem, then what exactly are you saying? These people have families. Yeah. They are married with kids, so they are dead, taken by the whole mess. Who do you blame? The state or the woman that is abusing their own efforts? Some of us carry on our body injuries. Some of us, if you don't have physical injuries, you have mental injury.
Yeah.
Personally, if there is any sound, any sudden sound, of course I jump. But for how long? What about the military men? What about the military men who, in trying to make sure that there is security, at least within the belt, they lose their lives, or they lose limbs, or they lose arm, or they get into one form of, fatal ailment? What about their psychological mindset? There's a whole lot that people don't even want to consider. So they just talk because talk is cheap.
I think it's not about playing politics with these figures or these numbers, because these are actual lives that are being lost from the military side, from the side of the agencies, from the side of the victims. People are losing their lives, and it's enough.
And when we say military, there are women in the military, and they are dying. Yes. There are women. It's just a woman's show. So there are women in the military. There are women in the police. There are women in the mobile police.
The families.
There are women in the Air Force. There are women. So they are all dying, giving their lives. And somebody will wake up and sit and be talking. I don't know.
I'm just big on rehabilitation because
because that's the way forward, really.
And it cuts across everybody, both the IDPs and NGOs and
everybody.
Everybody.
So psychosocial support is one area that UNHCR, Red Cross, ICRC, and quite a few other organizations have invested heavily. But the challenge today is that the world is also going. The world economy is also going south. So a lot of the fundings that we used to have is no longer there. In 2017, there was a massive scale-up of activities because to a very large extent, the insurgents were not that active at the time. So a lot of the emergency operations wound down or reduced, so there was a scale-up, massive scale-up. At the time, we had 2.2 million interventions, and we needed about $2 billion for that. That was the plan. Then we had 76 international and, of course, local organizations. It was heavily populated by international organizations because Nigeria organizations didn't have that heavy experience, and of course without the experience you can't attract funding. So what the Nigerian organizations did was to subsume their own interventions within the international organization. Of course the international organizations will not go into the deep field to operate because of their security and safety policies. So many of us were the people that were sent into the deep field to go and do the work. And of course you know that when you bring an international organization into Nigeria, for example, they come into Abuja. Abuja was classified as category 2, while Borno was category 4. So you bring somebody into a category 2. Of course, the safety and security allowance is high. You take the person to Borno, it's not times 2. It's like times 10 because he can die. We, the national organizations, we don't have those heavy, whatever. So if you're international and you're paid $40,000 a month, me, as a local guy, I'm paid $200,000. See the difference?
Yeah, even while you're
But you are taking all the risk. But at the end of the day, when things go wrong, they blame me, not you. Because it is assumed that you have all the experience and I don't have the experience. Whereas I'm doing the work, but you're taking the credit. So because of the humongous amounts of monies that was pumped in, and of course the overhead costs of the international organization, ate deep into that fund. What went into the operation wasn't heavy, but in the Nigerian explanation, it was massive. It was massive because we don't spend dollars; we spend naira. So for us, it was massive. It was massive. I mean, at some point, we were doing about 4.5 tons of food monthly in one location.
Wow.
One location of 176,000 households. So you probably have over 3,000 locations. So there was a lot of work that was done, a lot of work. But of course, that went, should I use the word west, when politics also came into it, and of course there were some mistakes in the decisions that were taken at the policy level. And when the military and the security agency came up with a super camp approach, which was really wrong. And of course, they've openly said that that was the wrong decision. And that made the IDP camps vulnerable. That made, of course, the IDP camps within the deep field. When I say deep field, I'm talking about the local governments that were liberated.
Yeah.
So Borno is not considered, Meduguri is not considered deep field. Yola is not considered deep field. But anywhere beyond Yola, which is the capital of Adamawa State, Meduguri, which is is called deep field. And when you get into deep field, there are deep fields. So you have local government headquarters, then you have other locations that you go to. So many of us were in those kind of locations. I mean, I was in ground zero of Sambisa for 2 years. Okay, so so that means at night you don't sleep because you hear bombardment on both sides of the divide, and you wake up in the morning, you thank God that you're alive first, then you want to go and check how many people are still alive and how to take care of them. Then we had the issue of malnutrition at the time. I'm sure you heard about it. If the NGOs did not go in at the time they went, everybody there would have died. Because we had massive malnutrition. Massive. Some people couldn't even move in, and of course the application of that funding. But today there's been much talk about localizing the interventions, localizing it in the sense that it is cheaper to use the Nigerian NGOs than to use international NGOs. International NGOs can continue to provide the technical support, but not to be deep involved as they were, because it's too expensive to do that. If you bring a D4, a UN D4, a Director 4, is a categorization, that's like a governor. That's high up there. That's like a country director you're bringing to head a deep field operation. You're going to take all the money and give him for coming there.
And that's what you mean when you say application of funds?
Yes. So
these funds could be applied to other things.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think we're not going to go on a break because our time is fast spent. We've been having an amazing time with our guests, and it's really been touching. Please, our phone lines will be open right now, and our social media handles will be open as well. Do well to call us in and also send us your tweets and your contributions before we round up the show.
I have one more. I'm just following up.
Yeah.
When you say you get 4.5 ton of food for just one location, were these sourced locally?
Well, a lot of the food were sourced locally, but of course our farmers couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
So this is still money leaving the country.
So a lot of the food came from Ukraine and other part of the world and all that. But of course we import a lot of food, but Nigerians don't know about it.
Yes.
We're not even 60% self-sufficient. Forget all the grammar.
And some of these actually might also be as a result of this crisis that we have too.
Not necessarily. I mean, Nigeria is a massive country with very huge population. I mean, if you check, so for example, when I say 4.5 tons, you're looking at, on the average, 50, 60 trailers.
And that's just for one location?
That's for one location.
That's just for one location.
3,000 plus other locations.
Yes. So you multiply it by 600 bags per trailer. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it drops, like that. So there are certain food that we don't make here. So for example, to fight malnutrition, you need the soya blend.
Yeah.
All right, the corn soya blend. We don't do it here. There are quite a number of others that, of course, they import. You can't fault them because, one, you're in a crisis situation and you need those interventions. At some point, I remember that the ports were congested, and even the trailers, all the trailers had to go to Lagos. To get a trailer to carry anything for you from Lagos to Maiduguri, they were paying as much as 1 million naira for the freight.
And these people were also at risk bringing in these items.
But they were all Nigerians, so they all made money as well. So it created job opportunities. It's created quite, I mean, as you get the positive, you also get, of course, the negative. But for me, I saw more of the positives because lives were saved. A lot of lives were saved. Yes, lives were also put at risk. The lives of the NGO personnel were also put at risk. You know, and for a very long time, people are going to live with trauma. Yes, we also get psychosocial support. The IDPs get psychosocial support. It's part of intervention and all that. Many of them also began to, go to school within the camps. These are the work of the NGOs and all that. Hospitals were created in the camps. Washrooms were created in the camps to reduce open defecation, and of course, and so many things were done. Markets were created. Because when the displacement happened, there's no market. Because you need to bring goods to be able to create a market. So we had to create market. We also created, train the people on how to be self-sufficient by training them on backyard garden, a backyard garden they do and all that. So be able to produce their basic vegetables to ensure, because every human being needs a particular size of kilocalorie per day. It's called 2.1 kilocalorie. Okay, per day, every human being to maintain your nutritional balance. If you eat less of that, you have issues. If you eat more of that, you have issues.
Were there some sort of empowerment? Sorry, because of time. Was there some sort of empowerment for the heads of household? Yes,
of course. I mean, a whole lot of them. We created quite a number of them. Some of them who were goat rearers got goats to rear. Then, of course, the goats multiplied, and of course, some got cattle. Some got, some of the female women got chicken. Some got a grinding machine because, of course, when you distribute sorghum, for example, it needs to be grinded. So there's a whole lot. We created some communal arrangements and trained them on savings and loan systems. A whole lot was done. If you have the whole day, you might not even be able to adjust it.
Thank you so much. I mean, I've learned a lot, and it's really sad to know that we still have a high rate of displaced persons and limited plans for rehabilitation, because I'm big on that. I know the psychological effect it can have on you, mental effect it can have on you.
I beg your pardon. Don't forget, we just centered on the Northeast. We didn't touch North Central, we didn't touch Northwest, we didn't touch Southeast.
Oh God,
We didn't go to the South.
It's really sad. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Leo, for talking to us.
My pleasure.
And we want to say there's still a lot to be done. There's still a lot to be heard. I mean, you need to hear, like you said, you need to hear it firsthand from someone who has the experience, someone who has been there. And want to say a very big thank you to you and your team for the work that you have done. Imagine losing staffs.
Some of them
I can't even imagine it. Yes,
knowing the risks involved.
Thank you so much. And this is the much we can take for this episode. We want to say a very big thank you to you for joining us on today's episode of Every Woman. Till we meet you again next episode. My name is Tiana Waldbrasi. Have a beautiful day.
And I'm Ijamo Dumodu. I want to use this opportunity to say a big thank you to all the NGOs, to the military, everybody that has been putting in the work done to make sure that these lives and property of these people are secure. Thank you so much for the work that you do.